Madam Speaker, Mr. President, honourable members, the purpose of today's vote is to vote on the budget of the presidency. But as we've become only too aware this past week, this is a ministry stuffed literally with secrets and scandals. We're asked today to say yes or no to this budget. But the reality is that none of us truly knows what happens in that office. And this makes today's vote very, very difficult. We respected your president while he was speaking, Honourable Papa. Perhaps you could return the compliment. Why is it that the presidency is the only ministry without a standing committee? We've asked this question many times before, and we're yet to receive a satisfactory answer. Why should every other ministry be subject to the parliamentary oversight of a standing committee, but not the presidency? And after this week's shocking revelations, it's very clear that the presidency cannot police itself. There are many questions we would have raised in such a standing committee, or if the president was attending the question session which should have taken place this term. But this budget is it, and this is our only opportunity, and we intend to take advantage of it. And one of those questions would be around the elephant in the room. And that is around the blurring of the lines between Mr. Ramaphosa, the head of state, and Mr. Ramaphosa, the businessman. While police budgets are slashed every year and policing resources in higher crime areas are stretched thinner and thinner, the VIP protection budget of the president and his cabinet is the only police budget that ever goes up. And now we're told that these precious police resources have been put to work serving the private business interests of the president, conducting cross-border investigations, interrogations, and cover-ups. And I'm sure you'll agree, Mr. President, and yes, you may say, Mr. Fraser, but it was your president who deposed an affidavit in court last year telling the court what a good man Mr. Fraser was and why Mr. Fraser should be appointed as head of correctional services. I'm sure you'll agree with Mr. President that the people of South Africa need to know, and they have a right to know, whether the VIP protection unit is being used as a private debt collection agency. Just as they have a right to know what is going on behind the closed doors of the Phala Phala farmhouse. Now, Mr. President, you've deftly avoided this topic today, but I want you to imagine for a moment what this must look like for an ordinary South African. What a hardworking, tax-paying citizen would make of a remote farmhouse somewhere where tens of millions of rands in foreign currency has been stuffed into the upholstery of lounge furniture. What such a regular citizen should think when told that more than 60 million of this was stolen and the president didn't want anybody to know about it. Where suspects were tracked, rounded up, interrogated, and paid to keep their mouths shut. Normal people, law-abiding citizens, have to save for months for things like school uniforms, for school fees, and children's birthday parties. And they cannot even imagine that kind of money. But you didn't even report it to the police. Never mind getting it back, Mr. President. You didn't want anyone to know it was gone in the first place. Just how much money must you have stashed away in homes if you can afford to turn a blind eye to $4 million? Now, you say that the money was from animals. Well, that may be the case, but I don't think there's many people who truly believe that. You say this was about dirty tricks. You say it was above board, that you've broken no laws. But stuffing millions of rands into couches, hiding the robbery from the police, paying the robbers hundreds of thousands of rands not to say a word, these are not the actions of somebody who has broken no laws. These are the things we see in mafia movies, about cartels, about syndicates and gangsters. If this was all above board and just dirty tricks, you could have ended it right away, Mr. President, by a full, frank and public disclosure. We could have avoided the scenes we had in the House today. We could have avoided the speculation, and we could have avoided us having to ask these questions. None of that would have jeopardized any investigations. An honest and innocent man who was the victim of a massive crime would have wasted no time in clearing these things up. Only somebody with a lot to hide would hide behind the smokescreen of a pending investigation 2 years after the event. So again, Mr. President, I'm asking you, for the sake of the country, for the sake of the presidency, to come clean to the people of South Africa and to this House. No more subterfuge, no more secrets. Whoever's advising you, Mr. President, not to speak out about this and set the record straight is giving you bad advice. How much money was stashed away? These are the questions we need to ask. How much was actually stolen? How did the money enter South Africa? And who brought it into the country? 2 years later, Honorable Papa, that's a new record, I think. Were the exchange controls of the South African Reserve Bank observed? How much is on the farm right now? How much is at other properties? Why did it not report it to SAPS? You've spoken today about how important it is to report crime and important the SAPS are. Why was it not reported to the SAPS? Were suspects detained? Was Major General Wally Rueda sent to Namibia? Yes, but taxpayers' money has been used to recover it, and that is the problem. Was General Rueda sent to Namibia to go and recover it? On whose authority did he travel there? Who paid for the cross-border investigation? And how much did it cost? Who paid for the security upgrades? We may not be the police, but we're Parliament, and that's our job, to hold the executive accountable. And finally, and arguably most importantly, Mr. President, given your unique obligation as the President to uphold the Constitution and serve the people of the Republic of the country, how do you square this obligation with this sordid detail of the case? I was doing the job that your government should have done in the Ukraine, Honorable Papa, but you're too scared to go there. That's the problem. Mr. President, every single day that these questions remain unanswered causes irreparable damage to the presidency, which has now gone from paralyzed to petrified. Even the very best case scenario, with the most generous interpretation of what has happened, how you came into possession of the money, why it was concealed in your house, and the reasons for the cover-up are damning. But we're not talking about the best case scenario here, are we, Mr. President? Because if we were, you would have surely reported this matter 2 years ago, or at the very least come absolutely clean about the matter as soon as it came to light. The fact that you've used significant powers and resources paid for by the taxpayers of the country and funded through this budget, which we debate in this House today, to conceal any evidence of this money tells me that the real story is something that the presidency will struggle to survive. Even your biggest praise singers in the media and civil society are now realizing that perhaps the emperor was naked after all. But to understand the real sense of anger and disappointment, Mr. President, that South Africans are feeling, you have to remember that we've been here before. And today's scenes in the House was like Back to the Future. Do you recall the shame of Nkandla and the arrogance of your predecessor? Do you remember the embarrassment of the fire pool video and all the shameless defending being done from the ANC benches? Do you remember the scathing rebuke our Parliament received for failing to hold the president at the time, President Zuma, accountable for Nkandla, and the solemn promises that were made thereafter by many people in this House today, never again? Do you remember the words of then Chief Justice Mogoeng in the 2016 judgment when he spoke of your unique obligations, Mr. President, as a first citizen? And I'm very glad that the Honorable Majudina quoted from that same judgment, but she left out the most important part, which is at the end. And let me remind you, and I quote, "He is required to promise solemnly and sincerely to always connect with the true dictates of his conscience in the execution of his duties. This he is required to do with all of his strengths and all of his talents and to the best of his abilities. But for the Deputy President, only his affirmation or oath of office requires a gathering of people, presumably that they may hear and bear witness to to his irrevocable commitment to serve them well and with integrity. You see, you have to be beyond reproach. You have to be open, you've got to be transparent, and you've got to serve people well and with integrity. But now there's only suspicion, secrecy, and silence. How exactly are you different, Mr. President, from the predecessor? Phala Phala is fast becoming your Nkandla, and it's forever going to be an ugly stain on this presidency. But here's the thing. The presidency is not yours. It belongs to the Republic of South Africa. And when you drag the presidency down in the gutter, you drag our country down with it. South Africans don't want this. South Africans don't deserve this. They don't want two-bit mob bosses.
Honorable Steenhuisen, will you please take your seat? There is a point of order, Honorable Danji.
I just want to check, Honorable Presiding Officer, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Honorable Danji.
And can take a question about if,
okay, thank
this
you.
is his only thing in the speech.
Honorable Danji, okay. Thank you. Honorable Steenhuisen, are you ready to take a question?
I hear the good news that Barney's is open again. Perhaps we could meet afterwards for a question. Our people don't want two-bit mob bosses with houses stuffed full of dirty cash for our leaders and presidents. They want someone who's going to lead by example, who puts his personal ambitions and business interests a distant second to the needs of our country. And so maybe this whole sordid mess is actually doing South Africa a favor by opening its eyes up to the reality of the ANC. If you were indeed the best that your parties had to offer, Mr. President, then this government's days in office are numbered. And our country's number one goal has got to be to reducing this once mighty and dominant ANC to being a minority party after the next elections. That's my priority, because things aren't going to change while the same people are sitting around the table making the same bad decisions and behaving exactly as their predecessors did. Once South Africa has put the ANC behind it for good, then we can start making progress and moving forward as a nation. And I look forward to that day. Thank you.